I wasn't abused, but I witnessed my mother being abused. And then subsequently, my father raised me. The first time that I can remember, I was awakened from my sleep, but not fully aware of what was happening. I could hear the violence in the movements of the furniture. I would hear my mother scream or cry to indicate that she was in danger. All I could do was lay there pretending I didn't hear it, all the while helpless. The situation imprinted a loss of security inside of me.
So, welcome to the Speak Up Against Stigma podcast. I am your host, Kristy Towson, and we are in store for a special treat on today. We are here with Angela, and I'm so excited to dive into a conversation with her. She's going to read about what she wrote in Speak Up Against Stigma volume two, and we're going to talk about her background. And hopefully, you walk away with some nuggets to help you live a more fulfilled and satisfying life. So, Angela, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So, introduce yourself to the listeners or to the viewers.
Hi. So I'm Angela Gorham. Um, like she said, one of the fortunate few to be able to tell their story in the next volume that's coming up. So very gracious for that. Um, so what can I say about myself? So I am a 25-year Air Force veteran. Been retired for going on 4 years now. I'm married. I have two biological kids. I have two bonus children. My goddaughter's currently staying with me. She's going into her senior year, and I have my little cousin who is 13. He'll be 14 in October. So I have a house full of kids.
You do have a house full. Oh my
I do.
gosh.
I do.
So, how are you managing with all of that?
So I will tell you, it's definitely been a walk with God, honestly. Um, I never foresaw having, the bonus children, in my lives as well. My oldest is 26, so he's, out living his best life in Arizona. And my biological youngest goes to college in Randolph, so he's home currently right now, get ready to go back in a couple weeks to school. And then I'll have the bonus kids that I said. So yeah, it's been, they keep me young, they keep me on my toes.
So let's dig
Hmm.
into it. So,
Yes, ma'am.
I've been doing this book thing called Speak Up Against Stigma because I believe that there are so many people out there that are hurting from a mental illness, from a mental condition, or just sad or depressed. Um, and they don't seek help because they feel weak, they feel ashamed, and mental health is not something that's talked about a whole lot. And so, you reached out when I put out the query saying that, yes, hey, I'm interested in telling my story for various different reasons. And I'm so proud of you, first and foremost, for doing that because I know that it's not easy to put yourself out there like that. And especially in your story, you talk about your parents, which I know is a very hard topic for anybody to talk about. But walk
Yes,
me through
ma'am.
that journey of you making the decision of, yes, raising your hand to tell your story, and then walk me through what the writing process was like for you.
So the process. So yeah. So how can I say this? I think after retiring from the military, um, you know, a couple other women that I knew had retired before me were like, "Hey, make sure go see a therapist, even on your way out. See a therapist because obviously there's stress, right? And leading up to you leaving a career that you've had for however many years, 20 plus, right? And then also what is it on the other side? And so that's what led the beginning part of my journey is because was retiring, and I just felt lost for a little bit. Like, what do I do now? I've been doing this, for 20 something years. What do I do next? And so in doing that, the person that I had basically kind of started peeling that onion back, like, hey, let's talk about this, let's talk about that, and then eventually, peeling back that those layers, you get to the root cause of a lot of trauma that people are hiding, put in a box and don't want to talk about, and childhood traumas, and that's what kind of opened the box for me was having to pull back those layers and say, okay, yes, this happened to me as a child. I wasn't abused, but I witnessed my mother being abused, and then subsequently my father raised me. So now I've watched somebody that hurt somebody that I love, and now you're taking care of me, and I've been fortunate enough, that he didn't abuse me, but I had to pull that out and talk about it because up until that point, it was never talked about. We just continue living life like we're okay.
Right. Exactly. And, I think that sometimes, especially within the Black community, we go on in life thinking that things are okay. And it's not until we've had an experience that we realize that it's not okay. And so I just, again, just want to applaud you for speaking up and telling your story. It means the world to me, and I really hope that the readers who read this story that they will be as equally impacted as well.
Yes, ma'am. And it's so
Um,
funny because you bringing this up, that was part of what he spoke to me about talking about the mother wounds. So that's all of that.
mhm, mhm, mhm. And so, take me through your story. Read a little excerpt of your story, if you will.
So I guess I'll just talk about this little part, which I have already alluded to about my father abusing my mother. Um, so the little part that I'm going to read is starts with, witnessing my mother being abused by my father left me feeling powerless and voiceless. I couldn't stop it, but it was subjected to it. The first time that I can remember, I was awakened from my sleep, but not fully aware of what was happening. I could hear the violence in the movements of the furniture. I would hear my mother scream or cry to indicate that she was in danger. All I could do was lay there pretending I didn't hear it, all the while helpless. The situation imprinted a loss of security inside of me, which is a basic need for a child's healthy emotional development. The trauma created a foundation for my avoidant attachment style. I became one of those adults that was unable to trust anyone and was ultra independent. I couldn't ask for help because I didn't trust anyone to do it the way I would. I became dependent, independent, and I didn't depend on anyone, including my husband. I lacked true intimacy because I didn't allow people in. My thoughts were the person would hurt me, and I couldn't afford to feel that. All of these traits stemmed from my childhood trauma, and they all are defense mechanisms.
Wow, that's awesome. You that's a mouthful right there. There's so many things
It
that we
is.
can talk about
It is.
from the childhood trauma, which these days it seems like it's a buzzword because so many people are saying trauma and childhood trauma. But as adults, as children who are traumatized in different ways, we grow up with untreated wounds, if you will. And so the best way for I've found to deal with those childhood traumas is to seek therapy, is to one seek out for help and to raise your hand to say like, listen, there are some things that I don't quite understand, but it's affecting me today and I need someone to help me, like you said, peel back those layers so that you can begin to figure out what's going on with me, because I think we all get to a point in life where we want to be better, we want to be healed, and we want to make an impact with the things that we've been through so that the next person doesn't have to experience what we experience. And that's part of the reason why we're doing the book in the first place, is to help other people. And then you go on and you talk about like not being vulnerable with your husband. Like, let's sit there for a little while, because I know, like, for me, anyway, it being married, and I've only been married for 6 years. You've been married for like 20 some years, right?
Yeah, 23. It was 23 in July.
23, yeah. That's not easy. That requires work. And
Mhm.
I know some of my single friends, they like, they'll deal with those problems, or they'll deal with, the things just to have a man. And I say, no, you want to be whole first. You want to do your work first, because you're in a relationship with another person, and then you're
Mhm.
bringing your hurt, he's bringing his hurt, and before you know it, y'all just got one messy mess, big old mess.
Yes, yes,
And
ma'am.
when I met my husband, I was just coming out of a really bad situation, not a relationship, but a suicidal attempt. And I thought that I had done all of my healing, all of the work,
Mm,
but I still wasn't ready to be in a relationship. But then somehow, some way, he swept me off my feet, and here we are, 7 years later now. And it's been so glorious, and I count it all joy because of God, because he came
mm,
in my life right in just a broken place for me,
mhm.
but he was able to love me without like judgment,
Oh,
without
beautiful.
like all of that. But it was me who was causing a lot of the problems in the beginning, because
Mhm.
like you said, it's hard to let your guard down and trust someone else when you have trauma.
So my husband and I are both only children. We're
Me
both
too. Us
our
too. Us
birthdays are like,
too. That's
yeah,
so
yeah.
funny.
We're only children. Yeah, it's funny, and we're both like, if you believe in horoscopes, both Cancer. So people are like, how did that work? How did y'all even get together? How did that happen? And I'm still in all of that. But we eventually, so basically I will say this, most of the marriage I was definitely Wonder Woman in that marriage. And when I say I was Wonder Woman, like, I took care of the kids, I took care of the house, I didn't ask for help, which is one of your characteristics of childhood trauma, especially the one that I endured, is being independent, right? Being independent, not asking for help, not being able to ask for help, even if you are overwhelmed, not being able to communicate that. um we were both in the military, so add that added addition, pressures on top of that. We have our own careers. From majority, a good portion of it, he worked a different shift as well. So basically I was like a single mom for the most part,
Mhm.
right? Because we would only see him on the weekend. um so that layer of it, right? And so I pretty much just did everything on my own, never asked for help, never did any self-care, never did any of, any things like, hey, I'm burnt out. But I was operating in survival mode also. So that's something that you have to take into account when you're dealing with trauma. As you know, you've operated in survival mode because that's all you know, right? You don't know how to be in another, to be able to relax yourself, your nervous system, right? Or to be able to, be able to say, hey, I need time out for me, because you feel like you're letting down, your family, you're letting down your kids, you're letting everybody else down because you can't do everything, and you just try everything to make it right, to make everything happen, right? As far as uh, your birthdays, vacations, all of that, right? And so it came to a point where this is recently, like, my kids are older now for the most part, and I have teenagers in the house, but for the most part, they never saw that other side of me. It took my mother passing away for them to actually see me cry. So they had never saw me cry. They had only seen, the happiness in this part, but they didn't see the other part of that. And that hit me like a ton of bricks when, my oldest son was like, Mom, I've never seen you cry. Like, this is the first time I've ever seen you cry. And I was like, I had to think about that. I was like, you're right. You've never seen any other emotions from me. And that's not good either, because I don't want you to think that women don't cry, right? And that we're not sad and we don't have these other emotions. So that made me look at myself as far as how emotionally available was I to them, to my husband. So that part of it made me realize I had to change that. I can't not be, and the military helps with that, right? Because in the military, you're not, as a woman and a black woman at that, you can't be showing all these emotions and being all emotional, because then they're looking at you like that's a sign of weakness when it's actually the opposite, right? But you learn that culture and you fit into that culture, and you have to be that way to survive and thrive, right? In order to make it as far as you can make it. So I made it to E8, which is one from E9. I could have made E9, but I walked away from it. I didn't, I was like, I sacrificed enough with my family. My son was a senior at the time, so he plays basketball. I wanted to be there for that. And I was like, no, you've took enough from me. So I'm not doing it. So I walked away for 25 years. And that's where the work really began for me. Like you said, therapy. And I want people to know the biggest takeaway with therapy is, it's not a one or done. It's not a I went 3 times and I'm good. It's a no, this is a constant thing. It's going to be a part of your life. You may not have to go all the time. Like I go monthly still, but it's not a okay, I'm healed now. I don't need it no more. No, no, because it's life, and life is going to throw challenges at you, and you're going to need that. But it's going to make you be better equipped to deal with those challenges, right? It's going to make you better equipped to be able to ask for help. And that was one of the biggest things I remember the first time I asked for help. I was trying to do something with the gaming system, and I don't play games like that. And my husband was at work, and my son was still here. He was still in high school. And I asked him for help, and he was like, Mom, it's not that hard. And I was like, I don't know nothing about the system. Help me. I was trying to erase it, and because I was going to give it to somebody. And I just remember asking him for help, and he wouldn't help me. And then I asked my husband, and he wasn't there. And I just remember that feeling of, this is why I don't ask for help. This is the reason. And now I got to figure it out. And then I just broke down and I'm crying, and my son's like, "What's happening?" And my husband heard me crying on the phone, so he comes home from work and he's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, this is I have to talk to you about this. I don't ask for help. I don't ask you to ask for help often. And I'm asking you for help, and you're not giving me the help. So now I'm feeling like it was a mistake. And I don't want to feel that way, because I have to be able to ask you for help. You know what I mean? And after that incident, they were like, okay, all right, we see what's happening here. And when I ask for help, it's not a, you know, I'll get to it when I get to it, or I'm gonna make you feel like you don't, you have to figure it out. Like they do. They're like, okay, let me ask mom. Mom doesn't ask for help often. Let me go ahead and do, what she's asking me to do. So, but that took growth, right? That took having to go through therapy. That took having to have the courage to be like, I can't continue to operate like this, because now I'm running myself, you know, down to the bone. And how's that helping anybody else? Because you're the center, to make everything go, right? Women are the center of the family. We make everything go. So if we're not good, what's that? The rest of the family's not going to function, right?
That's right. That's a very, very good point. And I'm glad that you brung that up and you articulated that so well, that scenario with asking for help with a video game or a game, and not being able to get what you need in that moment and feeling vulnerable, but tapping into that vulnerability to be able to say, like, I'm off centered, something's not right, I want to be able to do this thing, but it's like my mind or my body is not allowing me to, and then pushing through that, and then speaking about what you need in the moment with those that are closest to you, I think is so powerful. Just that self-awareness on its own, to be able to just know what you need, because a lot of times we don't know what we need, and we struggle and we get stuck and we stay in darkness when we don't understand ourselves. And so therapy is very, very important in helping recognize those areas of yourself that may not be that familiar. And I was getting a little teary eyed when you were talking about it, because I pictured myself being there with you in that moment.
Oh,
Like, you need somebody to help her. Somebody listen, somebody do something. Like I felt like I was like the
yeah.
angel on your shoulder, because I can feel that. And I'm
Mhm.
just so grateful of your journey. And so it sounds like to me, so you were in the military, you were working, just doing your daily thing. And here it is, 25 years, you go to retire, and as part of that, you go to therapy. And in therapy, you realize some things about yourself from your childhood that, and also how it impacts your relationships with your children, biological and bonus, and also with your husband. And so where are you today with all of that awareness and revelation and all of those things? Like, how does the work that you've done impact who you are today compared to who you were when you first started therapy?
Whew, that's a good question. No, I will say that, like you said before, you was talking about awareness, is being more in tuned with your emotions and being aware of where you are in that. Before, it would just be like, I'm going to shut down, or I'm just going to figure it out, or I'm just, I'm not going to feel the emotion. And that's really the biggest takeaway, is that you in the moment, don't push, don't suppress it, don't suppress those emotions. um, Feel it. And the reason is because the emotions are clearly an indicator of something wrong, right, in your body or with the situation. And you have to be able to feel that, to be able to, like, okay, why am I angry right now? What am I really angry at this moment? What is it about this particular situation that made me angry? And start pulling that back to get to the root cause, right? Because that's really what it is. Anger is the first emotion that's really not the real emotion. There's other underlying things, right? Disappointment, whatever, all these other things. And that's where you have to do the work to be like, let me get to this, to figure out what it is I'm feeling. And then now that I know that I'm feeling that, now that I know that that's what it was angry because of this or whatever, now you can address it, right? Now you can be able to be like, okay, I was angry because of this. Now let me process that and let me respond better, right? And it's all about responding better and being better. When you know better, you do better, right? Isn't that what Maya Angelou said? Um,
That's what we're
so
supposed to do.
yeah. So
However,
exactly. I mean, but I mean, I think a lot of people don't want to feel emotion because of the pain, and we talked about that before. And that, I know people are scared of that, and that's part of it too, right? But not feeling it is just kicking that can down the road further, right? It's going to happen one way or the other. It's either you do the work now, or you're going to be a 50, 60-year-old fool doing the work. Now, I say fool, but I don't mean it that way, because people feel like at 60 you should be somewhat established. And that's another thing, is a timeline. There's no timeline. Like, you need to figure out, okay, now I need to do the work. I know that there's some things in me and everybody, because nobody on this earth is perfect. Nobody. So everybody got something that they got to work on, some issues, some situations, some things that they got to work on. And it's just working on to be a better version of you. And really, that's what it is, right? And that's what, even with God and having faith, the biggest thing was like, treating others as you want to be treated, right? It's, doing better and helping others. And I think that's really us being able to tell these stories and talk about it, is to be able to help other people who may be scared to talk about it, or be scared to say that, that was me, or, I was the same way, or don't recognize that they were that way. But hearing my story is like, hey, I kind of do the same thing too. I'm kind of the same way. And I didn't realize that that's not a good thing to be, not showing any emotions. Um, at all, or being emotionally avoidant, or being uncomfortable. And that's the biggest piece. You got to sit in that uncomfortability, because that's where the growth happens. And that's how you come out better, um, than you were going into it. And it's a
yeah.
continuous thing. It's continual. It's not a plateau. It's not a place you arrive and you're good. It's continual until Jesus, beside, God calls you home. It's continual.
Yeah, you're saying something right there because you said be uncomfortable. And you know that we don't necessarily always live in a society where we want to wait or be uncomfortable or sit in that pain. But I'm finding, just kind of like I said earlier, like delay is not denial. It's, even if you are delayed, it doesn't mean that you are denied, because you still can continue on in your journey. You're just going to go a different way. It's just a different path. And
Mhm.
sometimes when that thing is eating up at you,
Mhm.
it's like that uncomfortableness that you feel
Mhm.
makes you want to abort the plan and do something different. But that's where the real growth happens, is if you can sit there, sit in it, deal with it, and figure out a way to push through that pain, push through being uncomfortable, just push through and realize what is on the other side. And then you'll realize, once you cross over, that it wasn't that bad, that it's okay to feel how you feel.